action, and welcome everybody. This is PnP Weekly episode 209. It is 8th of November. Wow. This is what happens when you spend 1 week in Las Vegas, right? So
yes, you will. Yes, you were there for a week, but it feels like half year.
That's true. That
you
is
grew
so
older
true.
by half year spending a week in Vegas.
That is so true. I think the amount of noises and interactions and all of that, for sure, made me older than 6 months. Anyway, so 209, it is 8th of May. My name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a principal product manager in Microsoft 365 platform areas. Last week I was in Las Vegas. We had the Microsoft 365 conference, and and now it's Monday. We're back home. Woohoo! With me as a co-host.
Yes, in my own home. Hey everybody, my name is Waldek Mastykarz, and I am cloud developer advocate for Microsoft 365 at Microsoft. And I was in my own home. I wasn't in Vegas last week, which is why I haven't aged. And to me, it's still 8th of May. Yes,
exactly. Well, it's to be with all the honesty, it was actually quite exciting to be in Vegas. Yes, there's the downside of being in Vegas, but I tend to do this in a way that I focus only on the work, and then staying in MGM and having the conference center in MGM, and you can minimize all of that extra noise. It's okay. Well, you can't minimize noise in Las Vegas, but so. Extra things what you need to deal with.
Are you trying to say that maybe you need to hold the flaps as they put on a horse just to make him
focus?
Exactly. Don't worry about anything else. Focus on your path. Just follow your path.
Yes. No, it's okay. It's kind of it's been a while since we've been in Vegas. I think when was the last time? 2019? 2018? I can't remember.
Yeah,
but anyway.
I don't know. But I think I've been there two times, I think.
Yeah,
or maybe three times. Yeah,
I was first time there in 2014, so nothing has really changed. But what was kind of cool to see, nothing has really changed. I think the best thing is to see the people anyway and focus on the people, then all of that additional thing is just extra. And I had an opportunity. Actually, David Warner was with his family there, so David was delivering also workshops and sessions, and then. On the Thursday night, we went to see the Guardians of Galaxy #3 in a movie theater, which was outside of Vegas Strip, which is actually really cool because then you get to sit in a car to see the a bit longer ride, 20 minutes, and see what is outside of the Strip as well. So that was really cool.
Interesting. I recall once, way back when we were at the MVP Summit, I went to the cinema in Bellevue.
That's good.
I think
that's really cool.
It was Werewolf or Wolf. Anyway, but it was like we went as tourists to a U.S. cinema, basically to get an experience with huge chairs and small popcorn, which is like a gallon.
Yes, exactly.
Like I could eat with my whole family for a week from this.
Yes, true. That is a great cinema, by the way. At least they in there you can actually order beers and drinks and all of that stuff as well. So in that cinema, it's actually pretty cool. So no, not in this one last week, the one within the Redmond. That's what I mean.
In cinema or in Bellevue? No. So I was in the one in Bellevue.
Okay. So that's different. Yeah, the Redmond Town Center used to be at least a certain kind of. When have I last time been in Redmond? This is awkward. So one of the weirdest thing, by the way, before we move to the interview and all of topics, in the Strip, obviously Las Vegas, long flights and all of that stuff. When I was flying home from Vegas to Helsinki, I flew through Seattle, and was surreal to land on the Seattle airport, given the fact that I've been flying to Seattle like quite a few times within my career in Microsoft. And you land on Seattle, you go to the Seattle the Terminal S, which is the international, and then you're sitting there. It's like, wait, I'm in this terminal, which I typically am when I'm coming back from office, but I wasn't in the office. Why am I
in the office? But why am I here?
Exactly. Why? So that was kind of cool, and of course it was raining as well, so no surprises there.
Nothing has changed in that regard. Yeah. Wow.
Cool. Anyway, today we have a relatively new MVP as the visitor, and the visitor is
Milan Holemans from Belgium.
From Belgium, yes, your neighbor country. Is it the Netherlands and Belgium? Is it the same as in Finland and Sweden? So, make fun out of each other and.
Oh yeah, making fun of each other. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're not making fun of Milan in this interview, though. So definitely.
Oh, we kind of lost that opportunity now.
Because we recorded that already.
Didn't even
missed opportunity.
Yeah, we will get back to it. Like, we will see. I mean, that only works. That works the best in person, in a way.
That's true. That is true. Yeah, the weirdest thing is Irvin, who lives in Sweden nowadays, but he's based in Dutch from Netherlands, so it's like complicated. He's gonna make fun out of?
He's been in Sweden for a while now, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
How Dutch is he still? Like, it rubs off at some point. Like beyond a certain point, like you don't get to call yourself. I don't know.
Cool. Anyway, let's jump on the interview with Milan, which was already recorded, and it was fun. Hey, let's actually jump.
It was really cool.
Thank you, Milan, joining on the PnP Weekly episode 209. Good to have you on our show. Can you do a quick intro as who you are and what you do for a living, and then we'll move forward from there.
Sure. My name is Milan. I'm a Microsoft 365 consultant located in Belgium. Microsoft 365 consultant is quite broad, but we mainly focus on SharePoint development. What I basically do the whole day is digitalizing and automating business processes of our customers so they become much more efficient. We use their SharePoint development, so front-end SPFx development to back-end Azure services, but also Power Automate, Power Apps, these kind of things. And in my spare time, I'm also active on GitHub as well as a CLI for Microsoft 365 maintainer, which also consumes quite a lot of my free time. That's about it in a nutshell.
Now let's
You are an MVP. And you are an MVP.
Yes.
Yeah,
Microsoft 365 developer MVP.
Thing, right?
Yeah, yes. That also.
Yes. Congratulations on that. That's relatively new. Well, relatively new. It depends on perspective, right?
March 2020, right? No.
September, 1st of September 2022.
Okay, so less than a year. So that's
Yes.
Congratulations on that as well. Did you, by the way, just we're putting we're recording this. Did you have a chance to go to the MVP Summit or attending any of the sessions? So let's not talk about the content too much, but
I'd love to attend it physically sometime, but this year I did it digitally, so from home. It was also quite late when they announced that it was possible to go over there. So hopefully next year, but this year it was digitally, but still cool though.
Yeah. Cool to know at least some of the upcoming features and announcement in build. We know about them. Right, Waldek? No?
Yes, there will be a release, and we're going to announce.
We can announce a thing or a few things. So no, just
yes.
Now, let's go back on your day-to-day work a bit, and let's talk about that one a bit. So you're saying that the SharePoint is still a thing. Just kidding.
Yeah.
It was never a thing. Was there a time where it wasn't a thing?
So what does it actually mean, the UI? If you're building UI SPFx, what kind of things are you're building for the customers? So what good examples of that?
Yeah, most of the time just custom web parts tailored to the customer, or list view command sets. So to automate things at lists, so they have to do less clicks because people are lazy. But mainly these kind of things. But also SPFx web parts connected to Azure functions on Azure. These kind of things also happen.
What would be the, let's say, if that's the technology, but what is the actual business scenarios? Any examples of what are the typical things? Surfacing business data in the portals, or is that a thing, or what kind of things?
The weather in Belgium today.
Yes, the weather report, of course, and the lunch. Yes,
that's easy.
Yes.
Terrible. Most of the things, it depends a bit, but for list view command sets, for example, to connect lists with each other. So if they click that button, something will happen in another list, and that will trigger a flow, for example. These kind of things happen. For web parts, that depends. Basically, most of the time, overviews where people can also do things, start new business processes, these kind of things. It's very specific from customer to customer. So
And just out of curiosity on the Power Platform side as well, how often do you actually see the Power Platform being used? Is that every single project?
We use Power Automate quite often. Most of the time for scheduled tasks, for example, or just to do quick automations on a list, for example. Power Apps we do as well, but less. But it kind of depends. I like to do Power Apps, but actually SPFx is much faster. It also it's also more development, but you have to weigh the one to the other. So it really depends.
How would you make that decision? How do you compare? Power Apps is low code. It's not no code for sure, because it's more like low code versus SPFx. What would be the decision-making factor from your perspective?
Well, if it's an easy app that goes between the lines that Microsoft drew for us, then it's quite easy to set up a Power App in a few clicks, and it's the development time is much less than an SPFx component. But in my opinion, if it's getting too complicated and advanced, then I'm most of the time fighting against the Power Apps framework instead. Then it's helping me. So then I choose an SPFx web part or component.
Yeah, makes sense.
One thing I want to ask you about, right? Because you mentioned quite a few things, right? Like you mentioned that in your work you use SPFx, you use things on Azure. Now you mentioned Power Platform, Power Automate, Power Apps. I bet there's also a part of AAD in there, probably also Graph, maybe some teams. So in other words, like it's all over the place. It's like you really span all of our clouds. Like there are folks internally at Microsoft who are very much, thinking about Teams developers or SharePoint developers or Graph developers. Is that a thing, or do you really think more like no, like we really cut through all of them and we are just really M365 devs?
It kind of depends. I think I know how to build a Power App and I can do advanced stuff, but I'm not saying that I'm an expert in Power Apps, because the thing there is you always think in another language like TypeScript and C# and stuff, and that doesn't work over there. So you always have to look up things. They work differently there. So I'm definitely not an expert, but that's what I also like about my job. It's very one day you can do Power Automate, the other day Power Apps, then an SPFx web part. So it's not always the same, and I quite like that. But I also have colleagues that say, no, I only want to do Azure development, so Azure functions, and that's their choice, of course. So
right.
How often do you actually end up having an Azure piece on those implementations? Is it always or most of the times, or?
In the past, it was more than now, because I think now the business use cases are changing or something. So most of the time we don't really need it. But sometimes when you're building an SPFx web part and you need elevated privileges or something, so more privileges than the current user has, then we basically set up an Azure function that does the job for that user. But most of the time we don't really need it except for background jobs or something like that are not really possible in Flow or too complicated in Flow.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, Milan, how do you get to be a Microsoft 365 developer? What is your background? So are you graduated from Microsoft 365 University?
PHP, Java, MySQL.
Yeah, of course. Why not?
Well, I never knew what I was going to do later on. So in school, I once got a task for the math course. We had a graphical calculator called TI-84 Plus from Texas Instruments. And yeah, we had a task to make some little programs over there to calculate some mathematical stuff. And I found out that I liked it quite a lot, and I was better at it than other students, to say it like that. So yeah, when I graduated from secondary school, I was like, yeah, what am I going to do? Then I thought about that, and I said maybe I give it a shot in IT. So yeah, I went to do the IT studies. There I chose to become a developer because I found out, yeah, infrastructure is not really something for me. I like to develop things. When I got graduated there, I had to do an internship. And I also didn't know what to do as an internship. So yeah, I did an internship at the company where I currently work in the C# team, was it? .NET team, sorry, the .NET team. But there they said, well, we're not looking for extra team members, but our SharePoint team, yeah, they desperately looking for more members. I was like, what the f is SharePoint?
Beep, 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 beep. Family show,
beep,
family
beep.
show, family show. Where's my beep? Is it?
You lost it.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
So I didn't really know what SharePoint was, but yeah, I gave it a shot, and yeah, I liked it quite a lot, and yeah, I'm still stuck there. So that's how I became an SharePoint/Microsoft 365 developer.
Yeah, you need to be careful. Some people have been stuck in SharePoint for more than 20 years. So you know,
Yeah.
so I'm not one
That's
of those because I
dangerous.
started in 2006. So, but
you will be very close to that. Like it's 3 more years.
yeah.
Actually, thinking of it, like it was my first. It was the first time I was exposed to it too, 2006 and 2006.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think that's
3 more
the
years.
biggest moment on growth burst, and of course SharePoint Online as well, and Microsoft 365 for sure. But yeah, 2007 was the explosion of SharePoint demand. And given the announcements from last week, I don't think we will have that much. There's no fear that SharePoint is going to go away. There was quite a lot of cool stuff announced in Microsoft 365 conference. We just need more APIs, right? Why isn't every single thing have an API? I don't know. So.
Ship it.
Documentation.
Yes. And documentation. Yes.
Switching gears a little bit. Community. You are an MVP, and you mentioned that you also do something with CLI for M365. Like, how did that come to be? Because like you didn't know what to do. You tried a few things. It worked out a little, and then your internship in C# didn't really pan out. So you moved to this other team, and like I don't know how many MVPs we've got in total in M365 dev, Vesa, give or take. Ballpark figure?
MVP is roughly you mean the developer side?
Developer, yeah.
I think we're under 100, but still.
Yeah, exactly, right? So you are one of that selected group across the world, and then you also maintain CLI for M365. Like, how did that come to be?
Good question. I think, well, yeah. First of all, I can't really imagine my job without PnP, so it's literally everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. Look,
I'm trying to avoid it, but yeah, turning a corner. And, there it is. Leave me alone. No, Parker, no. Every single night. Parker, No,
He's standing next to my bed.
Yes, exactly. Or under the bed.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
The clone developer.
Yes.
But yeah, a few years ago, I was developing a web part, and I was using the date picker component of the PnP SPFx components because I needed some more advanced stuff than was provided with the Fluent UI framework. And yeah, there was missing a feature back then. There was no feature that you could set a max date and a minimal date, and I really needed it for my customer. So I created an issue on GitHub saying, "Hey, I need a max date and a minimal date. Can anybody help me?" But yeah, unfortunately, there was not much response coming on that issue. So yeah, I worked my way around it. But a few months later, I was thinking like, yeah, if I just learn how to contribute to these repositories, then next time I can fix it myself.
Yep.
So yeah, I started with some repositories, and I didn't focus to one. I did as much as I can. So I really contributed to the SPFx components, to the property components, the CLI, PnP PowerShell, sample webparts, all these repositories. And I started to really enjoy it because the gratefulness you get from people that you're helping is literally worth it. So yeah, that's how I rolled into it. And then I realized that the CLI repository was my favorite one because it was very active and well structured. So I really liked it. I put most of my time in that one. And then, yeah, last summer, Waldek reached out to me asking me to become a maintainer. So was very honored back then. And still.
Not anymore. Yeah. So.
Yes. Still like, the only thing expired on Wednesday. So.
Exactly.
It was nice for a day, but no, I'm still honored now as well. So yeah, that's how I rolled into it.
Now, there was a few things actually which I want to come back on that journey. That journey is actually good to test it out with what are the projects where you contributed. And that's actually a good sign on having a project which is, let's say, consistent and having the grit of actually following up on the issues, everything else encourages then people to come involved, which requires a commitment. It certainly requires a commitment to, help people to onboard and then scale. So first it was Waldek, then it was a few others, and then it grew to be CLI for Microsoft 365. So it's just a good example.
But there's also an interesting point, right? And maybe that's also a tip or a lesson for others. Like you first were exposed to CLI and other projects that we have in PnP as a visitor, a user, contributor, and now you get to be on the other side, maintaining and being actually the person who welcomes others. Like, how did you experience that switch from seeing, the external part of it to being on the internal side and now seeing like basically the kitchen, like how everything is being cooked and prepped and being in charge of few areas?
Well, it was quite a big change actually, because when I was just contributing to the CLI, I thought, well, it was just a bunch of people that do stuff in their free time, but yeah, there's a lot more in the background going on. We have a whole project running in the background on Basecamp where we keep track of everything. We chat with each other. We have meetings. So there's a lot of time involved there, and that's something that people don't always see, I guess, and know.
Yep.
But yeah, there's a lot of time. I spend a lot of time on it.
But why do you do that? Why do you spend a lot of time on it? What's the reward? Are we paying for you? No, just of course I know the storyline.
First of all, I just enjoy doing it, so I always keep learning every day. So it's nice if you do these kind of things that you learn about new APIs, about things you didn't know yet about Microsoft 365. You get different visions, and I also feel it's some kind of duty for me, because I used PnP so many years without actually giving something back. So yeah, I feel it as some kind of duty that now I have to do something back to other people. And yeah, it's just the IT world. If you see on Google, there's so much information and tools available for free. Imagine if everyone just said, nah, I'm not going to do it. The world would be terrible.
Yeah, that's true. Now, let's go back in time. You said that, you actually said it really well, that it took you a while to figure out how do you start contributing in GitHub, and how do you contribute, and how do you fork, and all of that stuff. Where did you learn how to do that? Was there a way of doing that, and what would be the tips for somebody? Because I think that is the major barrier for a lot of time for people to actually contribute and getting a bit more closely involved.
I totally understand that, because I also didn't have much experience in GitHub. But yeah, first of all, there is a PnP call you can attend where people are telling you how to use GitHub, how to fork repositories, how to contribute. I didn't attend it myself because I wanted to figure it out myself. But in fact, it's not that hard, of course. We are also building at CLI for Microsoft 365 and a contributors guideline where everything is very detailed, written out. JC is working on it. So I think things like this will help a lot. And also, I think every repository has a getting started guide. So I think with these things, it will probably work out. It's not that hard. All beginnings are hard, for me as well, but you'll manage.
Yeah, I think it's for sure. It's the courage of trying and then failing potentially, and then learning and trying again and then succeeding. So
yes, indeed.
I think that's part of the IT. And that comes to be the experience, and that's why Waldek is growing gray hair as well. Because experience, right? Well,
yes, it is experience of sorts.
Yes.
No, but yeah, it's also like depending on person, right? Like some folks are really perfectly fine. Like, I'm gonna do something. If it works out, it works out. If it doesn't work out, well, then I will learn from that, right? But there's also a group of folks who really feel, the pressure of working and failing potentially in the open. And many of the things that we run in community are pretty big and are being used a lot. So like you don't want to be the person who breaks the build and breaks the tool for everyone else, right? So that is kind of like, am I ready yet to do a PR or do a release? Well, yes, you are. And if you like, so it's part of the folks who run the project to create that environment and culture of like, yes, like people will try and probably people will fail, and it's perfectly fine. Like we will find ways around it, right? So having that is a critical aspect of it to be able to grow it beyond yourself, because otherwise you will be always stuck with your team, and it's just a matter of time before people, I don't know, their interests change or their personal thing will change and they will move on. So you don't want to be the last person on the ship and they're like, okay, so who's going to steer it now?
True.
Right. So it's a really key part to keep thinking about, like, how can we bring on more folks? How can we create a place where people can learn and grow? And one thing that we saw in CLI is that yes, it's a tool. It's a tool that folks can use for work to automate stuff. But there's also this other aspect to it, which is like for many folks, it's their first experience with open source.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's kind of our job to ensure that experience is awesome, because it's kind of like, the make or break, like how they will work in open source and whether they will come back or not, right? So, and sure, like, of course, it's not like that if they will have a bad experience with us that, they will never take another chance, but it just be, this extra hurdle for them to go through again to give it another shot. Whereas if we do our job right, it's that much more of a chance that they will stick and they will have a great place in which they can also be a part, right? So it's also this aspect to it that I think is also really cool.
Or learn another place where they can be a part of. But again, the initial, the experience has been positive. And that has a huge impact. Especially in open source and of course in IT and it's for many people, we as a Microsoft employees, me and Waldek now, you are a Microsoft employee, been for years already, but it's kind of our responsibility on also making this fine as a first experience because it impacts even on the image of the company, right?
Definitely.
Which is kind of one of those things which we don't necessarily even think about that much, but we represent the company. It's just part of the
and
model.
It's not just a company like a small shop around the corner, where if things don't work out, well, we close, we change the name, we put new banner on and hey, we're a new company. Like, no.
I can reboot the Microsoft 365 anytime if I want. So it's right here under the table. So
Of course you can.
Yes.
And then
that's how it works.
The moment you will do it, like the whole energy, like power goes down everywhere, and you're like, Vesa, what did you do now?
That's why we have the new nuclear plant in Finland. Come on, so
the nuclear, basically your basement, right? The nuclear plant.
True. Anyway, now let's see. What anything just a bit out of the context of the open source and your work? Anything interesting what you've run into or tested out recently, Milan, on Microsoft 365? What's the latest? Like, oh, this is really cool. I need to have a look on this, and how can I implement stuff on it?
2 letters. No.
AI.
Yeah. No.
Tough question. I've seen some stuff at the MVP summit that sounds interesting to me, but I can't say much about it, of course.
Sure.
NDA.
We can do,
No. Don't tempt him.
No.
But I don't know. There's not coming something to my mind about Microsoft 365 for the moment. But for CLI, for example, I said we're also always learning about new APIs and stuff, and now we're also migrating to another site generator, which is quite cool in my opinion. So we're moving from MKDocs to Docosaurus, which is much more flexible and stuff and based on JavaScript. I learned a lot from these kind of things. And I keep learning every day. It's quite cliche, but it's the truth.
No, but
I think that's the
that is exactly the thing, right? Like open doors are open door for a reason.
Yeah.
Right. It's exactly that. Like, it's a common thing. Well, because it's like for a reason. Like, yes, that's important part. Like the moment you stop learning, well,
everything gets boring.
Maybe time for a change, right? So
yeah, exactly. Now, from a timing perspective, what's happening this week? Anything interesting for you, Milan? Let's start with you.
Well, on the GitHub perspective, working on a new release of CLI, the v6.8, if I recall it correctly.
Yep.
The migration of the docs from CLI is also something I'll be working on. And this weekend, going to a concert.
Which one?
Woohoo!
Sabaton.
Which?
Sabaton. It's a
Sabaton.
Swedish metal group.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Nice.
They're coming to Belgium.
Oh,
Cool.
In Belgium. Cool. Nice.
Cool. What about you, Waldek? Anything interesting this week?
Always. So last week we've announced the Microsoft Graph DevX Early Adopter Initiative, where we recognize folks who provide us with feedback around the tools and SDKs that we build. So that is active. So we are actively looking around, having our eyes and ears everywhere. For folks who are sharing with us early product feedback about the few products that we released recently. So that is one thing. On Wednesday, we're going to announce another really cool thing. So stay tuned. If you are a dev, we hope that you will like it. It's going to be something really cool, and you can already earmark your calendars at the first 2 weeks of June. So don't plan anything there. Like if you have vacations or like cancel everything.
I'm on a vacation.
Ensure that you are around for the first 2 weeks of June, because it will be really, really cool. So more about that coming on Wednesday. What else is there? There's the ongoing war. So towards the end of May 22 or 2022 through 24, I will be in Germany speaking at ECS, the European Collaboration Summit. And I'm doing preps for the talk that I will give together with Gavin around the Microsoft Graph Developer Proxy and how you can use that to basically test your code. Like how will your code respond to failures in APIs, and especially errors that are really elusive, like throttling, rate limiting, and all of that. And personally, I find, like the geek in me is on. I find it so cool to experiment with all different things, like behaviors and simulating that, and also thinking of ways like how can I show it to folks, like rendering live charts of the request and fail requests, and like this is so freaking cool. Like the kid in me is on, and like how I can do stuff. Like it's really cool. I'm breaking stuff. So I'm experimenting a lot with that, and then they're just
and you're part of the keynote as well. So we need to work on that as well. So
yes, exactly. So I will be basically learning from you, Vesa, like putting my tentacles everywhere. Like I will be there, and I will be there, and I will be doing this, doing that. So so trying to balance it all out so that I can still keep track of all of that, because it's so cool. But it takes a lot of time, just to keep track of all these things.
True. On my side, I think we can spill the beans. We will be releasing SharePoint, new version of SharePoint Framework tomorrow, which is today when this is coming out. It's a bit controversial, actually, so it's going to be 1.17.2. There is there was a really nasty dependency chains update on a Fluent, which broke the default scaffolding in SPFx, which is like, oh, that's interesting. So somebody did a really nasty backward not compatible chains, which is then causing anybody who had a dependency on the package a breaking chains, which is like, no, don't do this. So we need to address that, of course. It's one of these things, again, it's not in the SPFx, which messed up, but that's where it's being surfaced. So we need to fix that and do a deep dependency, actual version dependency. And then we're going to actually address a few additional issues, which were not really issues as part of the 1.17, but things which we have already fixed. The team is actually looking into having more frequent versions. So 1.17.3 might be coming up with additional fixes, not that we would need it for fixing 1.17 stuff. No, additional fixes before there's going to be another major version. So which is actually a good mental mindset. Rather than wait 3 months for getting something fixed, let's get it out, because why not?
We ship a version every month, and we ship sometimes 2 versions a day. Like whenever we're ready, we're ready. The train is going. You hop on it and you're out.
Exactly, 100%. But so that's taking time. Easiest is taking time for sure. Community stuff, and then I need to catch up on what on earth happened last week. It doesn't matter if you're trying to stay up to date on Microsoft when you're traveling on a business trip. It's just impossible. It's just absolutely impossible. When you have, I had 2 workshops, 2 sessions, AMA and a keynote last week, so that's quite a lot.
What was the TLDR, the atmosphere on the floor? Like, what was the excitement around M365, SharePoint, Teams, development, pro dev?
Obviously, the AI stuff, the OpenAI AI integration and Copilot integrations across the board, a lot of excitement on that because it increases the productivity of the end users. So everybody will be more productive. And of course, a lot of excitement related on the new UX and the new experiences for SharePoint, because we're gonna do a complete revamp. Like Jeff Deeper said last week, this is the biggest UI announcement ever in SharePoint, which True. Now that will gradually be then visible in the product, and that opens up new opportunities. Because it's not like global intranets are going to go away. That's not the case, because we need to share information and news and articles and all of that stuff. So, and
pendulum swing.
Yeah, I think it's a bit. Yes, exactly.
It's no, we're not. We're on this. No, we're not.
Yes, that's true. That's true. It's always, we've seen this in this so many times, and being on Microsoft 365 or Microsoft, let's say, cloud now for what, 20 years? Waldek, you as well, 20, 25 years.
There was no Microsoft Cloud 20 years ago.
No, well, but Microsoft technologies, but you can kind of see always that now it's here, and okay, that's so legacy. This is the new thing. Oh, this is the cool thing. Oh, that's so legacy. This is the new thing, and you're like, we did this 5 years. Okay, fine. Again, we'll go there.
It's different now. It's different.
No, it's better. But yeah, I guess that's part of the experience as well. So kind of seeing the same trends and like. Well, we've seen this changing. Of course, the ultimate, let's say, the bigger direction, like being in cloud, obviously will not go away. We're not going to go back in on-prem. That's not going to happen. But the behavioral things in a individual level, and they swing on one side to another.
You mentioned there are a few things. Like recently, there was a whole discussion. Like I think there was even last week, there was an announcement that Amazon Video Prime, like they moved from cloud to on-prem too, I think, or even from the monolith. So I don't know if they moved from cloud to on-prem, but I think they moved from microservices to monolith.
Yeah,
so
that's a classic.
A bigger shift. Like there was a company that hosts Basecamp and Hey, they also moved from the cloud to on-prem. And basically, they shared openly the savings that they make in money and that. So it's an interesting time to see, like, there was a big hype to everybody to the cloud.
Yes, and microservices.
Exactly. And now people are like, well, we really need that on our scale.
Yeah.
And what would mean like because cloud is like, it has the benefits, but it isn't cheap.
Yeah.
Right. So like there are pros and cons to everything. So it's interesting, again, pendulum swing to follow. Like, we're all in now, and we're kind of like there. Like people are seeing this other side to it. So it's interesting.
And definitely the microservices versus monoliths, it's an interesting dilemma, because the microservices kind of make sense. We've got a completely different discussion again. But the problem with microservices quite often comes that they're always thinking on a future. So let's maximize the reusability of this code and deploy that as a microservice. But that actually means more cost. Comparing to the monolith architecture, which is really focused on delivering what we need today, rather than being readiness on scale and potentially reuse that in other locations. And if the cost impact is like 50% more to do microservices, wait a minute. So if economical situation is what it is, so we need to save 50%. So let's actually reduce and simplify and make just what we need today, rather than thinking always like, well, maybe in 3 years, this might be something else. Well, is it? Do we really want to now spend the money on it? Maybe it will be in 3 years.
Plus, how can you know already now what it's going to be in 3 years, especially in the IT, right? Where things change a lot. Like 3 years back, I don't know. Yeah, 3 years back, who would have thought, other than the AI folks, that there would be ChatGPT and you would be able to prompt your way through your work?
True. And who would have thought that the whole Facebook metaverse thing was completely yes.
I didn't like it from day one. I admit it all openly.
Yeah, that's fair. But it was such a huge push and a huge this is going to be the next big thing. If you're not on board with this, you're going to lose.
And blockchain. And
currencies. The Web 3 and Web 4 and Web 5 and whatever. So this is going to disrupt all of the industries. Yes,
eventually. Having covered all of the keywords, buzzwords.
Cool. Anyway, so sorry, Milan. This happens every now and then with Waldek. But thank you, Milan.
Like it's my fault.
Fair point. So thank you, Milan, for joining on the discussion. Really cool to have you on the show. Congratulations on the MVP. 9 months is relatively new still, and thank you for awesome work related on the CLI for Microsoft 365. And we will actually have pretty soon. I'm watching the Discord. We'll have some news related on Discord for all up Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community as well. So let's see if that's going well. That's something what Milan has been setting up with JC, which is awesome.
Among other things.
Among other things, yes, absolutely. But thank you, Milan, for joining. Really, really cool.
Cheers. For having me.
Thank you, buddy. See ya.
Bye.
Excellent. Thank you, Milan, one more time for joining on the PnP Weekly. Really cool to have a discussion. And it's always cool to hear those stories related on the open source efforts, which we've been pushing. So PnP is everywhere, right? So.
Oh yeah, there, another one.
There. Oh my God! Wow. No, but I guess we've been able to do something good, right, Waldek, on the journey line. So
press here for PnP.
That's good. That is. Where do I have something on PnP? Oh, I remember. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. Yeah. So
digging in his backpack trying to find
stickers. And
Parker, the hockey player, PN.
Yeah, hockey
PnP
player Parker.
Jersey, yeah.
That's a collectible. So
it is.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's actually interesting with that. Well, I've been using the same bag for like quite a few years because I love it. It's just the right size to put an iPad and noise cancellations, everything else. But then I always find, hey, what sticker is this? Wow, this is like 8 years ago or whatever.
MCM.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I have those
you didn't
somewhere
have stickers
as well.
Back then, right? We
did.
Okay.
So anyway, let's actually jump on the articles of this week. A bit of a random discussion again, so even similar kind of setup as with Milan. So that's monolith and microservices.
Yes.
I'll be the monolith. You'll be no.
Yes.
Well, if it's Microsoft, of course it's microservices. Now let's actually. Okay. Anyway, so let's start with we had on the Microsoft 365 conference, we announced a lot of cool announcements related on SharePoint, OneDrive, Microsoft List, and the related technologies. And the primary article was this one from Jeff Deeper, which is Welcome to the New Era of SharePoint and OneDrive in Microsoft 365. A lot of great announcements related on SharePoint AI, SharePoint Copilot with SharePoint. Let's see if I can actually find a Copilot in SharePoint. Yes, that's how you should be doing that, not SharePoint Copilot. Because it's Copilot and SharePoint. It's also
not Copilot with capital P in SharePoint, lower P.
Yes, that's good to yes. And I think there was a lot of cool announcements. I think the Copilot is for sure the coolest thing ever because you can basically ask the Copilot to create you content. So you can even upload a PowerPoint presentation and say, give me a default structure on this page based on this. Or you can say, I would like to have these kind of things, give me a structure, and it will generate that for you. And I love the fact that you can always say, well, give me another one, because, taking advantage of, that looks good, let me use that one. And that's pretty cool. So that's pretty awesome. And also we are doing a complete revamp of the UX on SharePoint Online for Microsoft 365. So just of course not for on-premises, but for SharePoint Online, which is part of Microsoft 365. And you will have much more flexibility of expressing your brand and experiences and in the UX level. So really cool stuff. Absolutely brilliant stuff. And some of the stuff, for example, we're introducing a brand center for SharePoint. Among other things, custom fonts and all of that will be then available centrally manageable for you to control within the whole setup, which is really cool. A lot of other stuff as well. So a lot of announcements. Across the whole stack. So really cool functionalities. So please have a look on exact details in there. Now, this is from the Microsoft 365 blog as well, and this is about the small and medium businesses. What's with this?
Exactly, right? So it's about this interesting part where how can small businesses use M365 to take payments through that, right? So there's this interesting aspect of how can you make AI basically work for you, but there's also this payment aspect to it. I think we talk about that, right? So it's twofold, right? Like one, we talk about the AI for SMB, like as a small companies, how can you use the power of AI to work more effectively? And then another one is, how can you use the Teams payment app to basically ensure that you are being paid? And there's a really also interesting thing, like how can you use the payment providers, combine that through Teams and so forth and so on, to basically simplify your setup, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. And all about that Microsoft 365 definitely, not only for enterprises, it is for small and mid-size, and there's an offerings and capabilities there as well. The payment app doesn't necessarily make sense if you are a massive enterprise customer, but it makes sense if you're a small mid-sized customer and having, for example, using the Teams for engagement, and then we can say, now, Waldek, you will need to pay for me to continue this discussion, or let's agree the details and you need to pay advance, and then you can actually do that in Teams. That's actually pretty cool. That's really, really cool setup. Now, related on the future, so this is for the Microsoft 365 future of customer support creativity in customer support, an interview with ChatGPT. So basically, again, on the AI, including the AI or using the AI to provide additional details and how that can actually support or help us to provide support within the Microsoft 365 areas as well. This is kind of a side discussion with Ross Smith and a ChatGPT, but that's actually pretty cool. So to having a discussion, how can you help? How can we go to the options and show the flexibility of ChatGPT as well? So really, really cool. Now on the other announcements, so we did announce a lot of stuff related to Microsoft Lists on last week in the Microsoft 365 conference as well. So an updates on the existing roadmap items and new capabilities, and I think that's pretty sweet as well. So we have a co-offering in place within the Microsoft Lists. So that's pretty sweet.
That is really cool. That is so like in the past you would log basically the whole row, whereas now you can, I think, edit the same item and then it's logged per column, right? So
yes. And you can see who else is actually editing and what within the list as well. So which is sweet. It's just the UX level extensibility in browsers is just going leaps and leaps forward. How easy it is to do these things nowadays. So really, really cool, and how it increases the productivity of the users. And this one is really interesting as well. So we will enable you to create custom forms within the Microsoft Lists. So you're able to design your custom form.
So how does that
100%
relate to Microsoft Form, which you can also attach to a list, which is
absolutely. So, and that was actually a question in AMA in the Las Vegas as well. So, because why are we introducing additional capabilities and things? And this is quite typical how we do things in Microsoft. We introduce capabilities and we test additional tooling, not necessarily competing toolings, but it's a complementary tool, additional option to create a custom form, and then you as a user can select which one is the one which you would like to use. This makes sense. At the same time, it would actually make sense to have similar kind of integration with Microsoft Forms. So how to create me a form for this list, but that's a different organization, and that moment it gets complicated. So let's see what's the future in here, what's the future in Microsoft Forms. So really, really cool. And you can send this form to be available for anonymously filled in as well. So which is really, really cool.
Yeah. So now it makes even more interesting, like when would you use which one? And I think maybe it depends on, well, it depends. What else would you want to do with the data you capture, or what are kind of the options that you want to expose? Correct. So it would be definitely interesting to see how it all works, right?
Yep, absolutely. A lot of cool stuff. We cannot go through all of the announcements because there's so many of them from last week. Yeah. Super cool week from that perspective. Now, on the content management and security, this is basically Microsoft Syntex is the, let's say, overarching name. A lot of announcements there as well. A lot of capabilities announcements from last week on different features as well. And options and the things. I know that there's going to be still more announcements on this area or related areas actually in Build as well. So this is not that yet. So Build is coming pretty soon in 2 weeks, and we'll share more additional details in many areas. What's new in Microsoft Teams? Again, the monthly summary. These are really good, right, Waldek?
Exactly, right. It's a one-stop shop for you to have an easy way to catch up across the board. Like, what have we updated in Teams? And we're doing this for Teams. We're doing this for SharePoint. We're doing that for Power Apps, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a really, really great effort from all of these groups to basically have a summary overview of, hey, these are the new things. And basically from there, you can go more in depth if they have additional articles around it. But at least you have this one place to go to basically skim and see what are the interesting things relevant to you.
Yep, absolutely. Really, really cool. Now, similar kind of things with SharePoint roadmap, as Waldek mentioned, the April 2023 update. And in SharePoint Sidemark typically also includes the intrazone roadmap, a monthly summary there. This time it is a chat with Ben Truelove. Ben is a principal designer in Microsoft focused on Microsoft Lists. So he's been around for a long time as well. But a lot of in the SharePoint one, we actually talk about a lot of the other announcements as well. For example, in Microsoft Viva and other settings and announcements. So a lot of cool things across the Microsoft 365 for a wave leader content platforms. Cool. A lot of cool stuff there. And then we had the update from Anna Hametz related on the UX and the other announcements. So this is kind of a follow-up on what Jeff did. We covered that first, and then Adam is reporting to Jeff deeper and owns the SharePoint and some of the Viva modules. And in here, he is basically listing all of the capabilities and with previews, for example, what we're going to do with SharePoint start page. And this lot of cool stuff and how the Copilot actually works. And I can start creating sites using Copilot, and then Copilot creates the site for me based on the, for example, PowerPoint presentation, and adds the needed people as a manager. You just execute, and that's it, and magical things happen. It's just really, 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 really cool. So
yeah, and I
awesome
think like
stuff.
The question everybody will have, like, when?
Yeah, well, there's two questions. We talked about this one in AMA as well. AMA was on the last day, or one of the last days of the conference. There's two main questions related on all of the last week's announcements. One question is when, and second question is
why so long?
How much?
Oh yeah. I get it. Yes.
Which is fair, and we will absolutely share more details as we continue rolling out on the features and capabilities, so which is really, really cool. Now, announcing Microsoft Craft early out of the recognition program. What is this, Waldek?
So we build, like at Microsoft, we build many things, and one of the places where we build things is the developer experience for Microsoft Graph, being the API to Microsoft 365. In there, we build tools and SDKs for developers and admins, and we want to learn more. What's working? Where can we improve? So with that, we launched a program that we hope will encourage you all to reach out to us and basically tell us what's working for you, where we could improve it, and basically in return, like, we appreciate the feedback and we will use it to improve all these tools and SDK. But also, additional thing that we want to do in return is to give you a digital badge that you'll be able to then add to the place where you have the badges from your exams, and basically show everybody that you work with us and you care about quality of all the different tools that we build for millions of folks across the world.
Yep. Really, really cool. Thank you for that. And good looking badge as well. Great community badges are always good. Now, Microsoft Graph Data Connect pricing updates, an update related on there. Microsoft Graph Data Connect has a price on it because you are actually using an API to access humongous amount of data. And then there are updates on that one. If you're using it, have a look on what is actually the impact and where the prices are moving, slightly depending on what kind of scenarios you're using it for. Then there was an update related on the Graph Developer Proxy.
Yes, absolutely. So last week, we released a new version of Microsoft Graph Developer Proxy with a few improvements. So we didn't do anything big yet. We have a few things that are coming soon, but we used kind of the cadence that we've got for the releases to improve a few things and make it easier for you to work with. So we did some small adjustments on the UI. We did some small adjustments around the config. And basically, it's a new version for you to take advantage of and test how your app will react to these really ephemeral API errors like throttling and things like rate limiting, because otherwise it's really hard to tell. And the last thing you want to do is for your app to break in prod. So definitely give it a try and test your apps.
Yep, absolutely. Really, really cool stuff. Then we had an update from Power App side on April 2023, feature update again, a similar kind of a monthly update. So what's actually included within the last month and references on all of the other blog posts. So really, really cool way of doing things as well. Thank you, Clay Visionary, on that one. On the Microsoft 365 Power Platform community blog, we had an update from Luisa Fries on the Team's Toolkit Cloud Skills Challenge. So there was 3,000 people involved in there, and then there's a selected group of winners related on the things related on their contributions, right? What they actually built and contributed.
Yes.
No? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. There's a lot of thank you, Luisa, on executing on this one. Really, really cool stuff as well. And then there was a CLI for Microsoft 365 6.7 released last week as well.
Correct. So again, following the monthly cadence that we have, we released a new version of CLI for Microsoft 365, which is the cross-platform, cross-shell command line tool that allows you to manage your Microsoft 365 tenant and SPFx objects. And in this version, we have a few updates. So we have 2 new commands, and then also some improvements, like one of them being a long-standing item that we had, which is the support for non-public clouds, like the GCC, GCC High, and so forth and so on. So if you work in that area, you can now use CLI for Microsoft 365 too. So other than that, there are a few more adjustments. So definitely check out the announcement post, and then also check the link of the full release notes that we've got for the release.
Yep, really, really cool. Thank you, Martin, on doing that. And then Martin actually had this one on his own blog, which is automating purview data retention using Azure functions. And that's actually really, really cool stuff as well. And this is part of a larger series related on the APIs and labels and all of that stuff, and a longer, let's say, learning exercise on reading things. If you're looking into data classification and labeling and purview usage, really, really cool series. Thank you, Martin, on that one. Then we had a article from Marcus Miller. Thank you, Marcus, also being incredibly consistent related on blocking and sharing your expertise. And this is authentication and Azure automation with managed identity on SharePoint and Microsoft Graph. Really typical scenario, actually. So
definitely. Like the last thing you want to do is to store your password somewhere. And this scenario is really great because it allows you to avoid that. So build a really secured app that you really use all of the abilities that you have available in Microsoft Cloud, right? To connect all the different services you've got with APIs and so forth and so on. So really, really interesting article for everybody who wants to do things right.
Absolutely. Really, really cool. Thank you, Marcus, on that one. Then we have an article from Haripriya Dhal, if I get the name correctly. SPFx upload file to SharePoint document library with metadata and a complex, complete example. And quite long, actually, article. And together with a video where he walks through how to do this and how we get the metadata in and what could be the form and uploading the file as well. So really, really cool stuff. That's the custom form, and then we're uploading file which is being associated to that form. So thank you, Haripriya, on that one. Really, really cool stuff. 3 videos. First of all, AC is publishing his video series. This a bit of a different kind of videos. These are intentionally long, but basically there are chapters within here. So these are part of the older, let's say, training package, which we used to have for the MS600. And as the MS600 certification no longer exists or it's getting dropped, he is publishing that training material now for free in internet. And that's actually really, really cool. So actually there's a lot of training material available from AZ on that.
Exactly, because just the fact that there is no exam, it doesn't mean that you don't need to know this stuff. And this is very important stuff because it's auth. So it's fundamental thing for everything you build on Microsoft Cloud, right? So these are really, really invaluable things. And AC is a great tutor, right? So it's awesome to learn from him. And these things being free, that is just a goldmine.
Yes, absolutely. And he has already released the short learning SharePoint, SPFx app development, and Office add-ins and Teams development. And then this one is the latest, which is the Azure AD app registration, because you need, well, it all starts with an Azure AD app, right? So
exactly.
And then we have Shane Young. That's a interesting freeze frame. No, No. Okay, that's okay. So on making dynamic updates with Power Apps, our do until loop. So basically implementation details and technical details. How can we do a do until loops within the Power Apps? Thank you, Shane, on that one. Cool. That's it for this week. So a lot of announcements from the Microsoft 365 conference and related announcements. Build is coming pretty soon as well. So it's been a really busy week. Month. Spring, a lot of announcements. So, which is really cool. Across the stack, from end users to developers to all of that, across all of the different features. So super cool stuff.
Totally.
We already went through what's going to happen this week. I guess that's it for this then.
So long, and thanks for all the fish.
Sounds good. Thank you, Milan, one more time for joining today for the discussion. Thank you, Waldek. You're awesome as always. Thanks everybody for watching and listening. We'll be back within a week. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.